Connecting. Okay, we are here with Carly. Hello, Carly.
Hello,
Hello, Carly. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
That's good. And you got your little one with you on your knee as
Yes,
well.
I do.
And I
Meant to be
thought,
having his bottle, but I think he'll
oh,
be excited about
what's going
what's
on?
happening. Yeah.
There's a strange woman on the screen that I want to talk to. Hello, little man. Carly currently has her son sitting on her knee, and she was just giving him a bottle before we started. Very cute, 4 months old.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah, awesome. And so, what star sign would he be?
Um, I'm not sure. He's end of September, so
Okay, he looks very bright and
he is.
happy. Good baby in general.
Yeah,
Oh,
pretty cruisy, so
oh, that's good.
pretty
Oh,
lucky there.
a bit of vomit. That's all right. A bit of vomit never hurt anybody. He's absolutely gorgeous. So when I was chatting to you before I actually hit the record button, I warned you that I was going to ask you a question, and that question was going to be, what is your superpower?
Yeah. I I think maybe I cope with stress well, or
Yeah,
a lot better than I probably, or yeah, I think like I do okay with stress.
that's good. That's a good life skill to have because I quite often very stressed and it can make you very sick
Yes.
and drive you crazy. So tell me a little bit about your family. You're married or engaged or
Yeah, so we're engaged. We've been engaged for a year. We've been
yep.
together for just over 7 years,
Wow.
and this is Theo is our first one between us, and then I have an older son who is 12, nearly 13.
Oh wow. So there's a massive age gap between the
There
two.
is.
Yeah. And how does his little big brother, I should say, do with being a big brother?
He loves it. He
Yeah.
absolutely adores having a little brother. I was getting very excited.
He's gorgeous.
Yeah, he's just like, he'll get off the school bus and come in and just wants to pick him up and just hold him, and
Yep.
yeah, he just loves it.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like, by the time they get to that age that they deal with the adjustment a lot better when a new one comes in. There's 5 years difference between my two. Um,
Yeah.
the age gap wasn't intentional, but it's actually worked out perfect, I feel, anyway, because my oldest one was just that little bit older so that she could I could involve her, like, oh, go get mummy a nappy and help me change the baby's bum. And it was almost like
Yes.
a live living doll for her, and she loved it. So it was good. Um, things have changed now that she is a little bit older and she's hit the teenage years, and the other one is still, she's 8. And so, you know, teenage hormones mixing with an 8-year-old child that wants to
Yeah.
play Barbies sometimes doesn't
Mix well.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, but they do all right. They're pretty good kids, and I'm glad for the age gap. But yeah, so did you have to go through any IVF journeys or anything to have your family?
No, so it was something that was starting, I guess, to be on our radar for Theo. So my oldest son Tyler, I had him when I was 20, so that was
Yeah,
kind of it was a nice surprise, but
yeah,
there wasn't that worry or stress about anything about fertility or anything like that.
yep,
And then in early, I think it was mid 2020, we decided that we would try for our little one, and it was definitely not as easy as I thought it would be.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah. In terms of falling pregnant or the whole journey in itself?
I think falling pregnant, I think it's definitely a lot different to when you're trying to when it just unexpectedly happens, like you take that
Yeah,
for granted a bit, I guess.
yeah,
um yeah, so I I guess I wasn't fully prepared on how long it might take or things
mm,
like that. But yeah, I'd come off my I had the implant on, which I'd had in for like nearly, I think, 6 years. So
Mhm.
completely off, contraception. I thought, oh, that might, I don't know, make it a bit hard. I'm not sure. I
Yeah.
didn't really do a lot of looking into it. I thought we'll just see how we go.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, so you just winged it and yeah. Oh,
pretty
that's
much.
pretty good. Oh, good. Oh, well, that's fantastic. So I'm guessing like very proud dad. Is this dad's first baby?
Yeah, it's his first.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Oh, good. And how's he going? Is he
yeah,
loving
good.
it?
He loves it. Very hands-on, and
Yep.
yeah,
Oh, good.
he's
Oh,
good.
oh,
Yeah,
that's amazing. So, we had a little bit of a discussion before the podcast, and I know from your application that that this hasn't been your second pregnancy. There actually has been another pregnancy,
yeah.
which didn't turn out the way that you planned. Can you tell us a
No.
little bit about that?
So that was yeah, so it was a bit of like, you've heard, I guess you hear about people having, miscarriages, or I'd heard the term ectopic pregnancy before, but I didn't really understand much about it or
Yeah.
anything. And I think until it happens to you, you're a bit like, oh, that's sad for that person, whatever, but you actually don't think more of what it all is. So we one morning I just woke up and I had this intense abdo pain, and like it just kept building and getting worse and worse. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh, I think I might need to go to hospital. I didn't know I was pregnant at the time either.
Oh, wow.
So we had been trying. I was due for my period and was starting to get a few signs. I was like, oh, I wonder if it's just like my period's about to come, or if we are,
Yeah.
because we've been trying for a couple of months by that point.
Mm-hmm.
A year before, I'd had kidney stones, and it felt a lot like that.
Oh,
That
no.
so I was like, oh, it's probably just that again. And I was nearly going to be like, no, you go to work, and my son go off to school, and I'll just sort myself out.
Yeah.
Once they were all sorted. And then I'm like, oh, okay. We get to the hospital, and they take me straight in, and they start giving me like pain medication. Like, I think they'll give me ketamine actually, like, because it was just wearing off like so quickly. And I don't think I've ever felt such an intense pain before.
Mm-hmm.
And they did all the routine tests, and then I felt a shift in like everyone around me and how they were treating. They're like, oh, we can't give you the ketamine anymore, here's some Panadine. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then a doctor come over, he's like, has anyone spoken to you? And I was like, well, specifically, like,
Yeah. Not one-on-one.
not really.
Yeah.
And they're like, you're pregnant. And I was like,
Wow.
oh, okay. And they're like, but we think it's ectopic, we have to remove it. And it was kind of all within that space of
Oh,
a
dear.
sentence, like
Yeah.
finding out. So that was just a weird feeling, like, finding out and then also being told, but you're not going to be, we're gonna.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would spin your head out a little bit in one sentence being told you're pregnant, and
Yeah.
the shock and love that you felt in that very split second, only to be let down and have that ripped away from you in the same space would be hard.
Yeah. And it was because it was COVID at that point. So my partner hadn't actually been allowed to come in with me. He had to wait outside.
Yeah.
Because it was early in the morning when we went to the hospital, he actually had jotted back home to drop like my oldest son off to school. And I
Yeah.
rang him. I said, you need to come back here. I said, I'm pregnant and they're going to send me for an ultrasound.
Yeah.
So I think because of the circumstances, I actually let him come in.
Yeah.
And we went into that. A lot of people, I'm assuming, would have had an internal ultrasound, and you don't really feel much or whatever, but
Yeah.
it was painful. Like I could feel like
I can
everything.
imagine.
It was so painful, and I'm like crying, and the technician, he's like, I can stop if you want me to stop. I'm like, yes, but I also want to know what's happening.
Going on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can make it hard.
Yeah. So Yeah.
Oh, you poor bugger. I'm so sorry for your loss. I wish that we're talking about anything else other than your personal loss. And so
Yeah.
I'm guessing being so early in the fact that you only just found out literally at the hospital when the pregnancy was coming to an end, you wouldn't have been able to confide in any family members or anything like that either. So
No.
yeah.
So, and because they were sending me like in for emergency surgery, so I ended up, they came back and they said it's actually ruptured, you're bleeding internally, and we need to send you in and we're removing your tube. And they're
Wow.
like,
Yeah.
but they're also like, but depending on what we find, we might have to, you know, do more. And so that
Yeah.
scared me. So I was like,
Mm,
what if it is worse than that? What if we're not actually, this is the end? Like, you know, we're not going to be, you know, I just
exactly.
had all these thoughts kind of rush at me. I didn't want, sorry, I'll just pick up this dummy.
You're fine. That's what
I,
this podcast's about.
I didn't want my partner to tell, like, ring my mum or dad or let anyone know that I was going in for surgery or
Yeah,
anything. I guess I didn't want them to worry until I could like tell them myself.
exactly.
Yeah, so I remember he could wait with me until right before I got led down.
Mhm.
And in then I just remember they had some student, I don't know what they were, student doctors or whatever. They were there too. And you know, they're curious and asking questions, which that never bothers me. But
Yeah.
they were also, I think, a bit like, oh, I didn't know what to say once I said, yeah, this is happening. I only just went, and they're like, oh, that's
Yeah.
hard. And because by that time, I think I was just lying there like silently, just crying. And
Mm,
I had the only other surgery I'd ever had was for my cesarean for my older son, and that was like an emergency one and
yeah.
whatever. So that also was like a rushed procedure.
Yeah.
And I don't remember, I think, having too much thought about it at that time. But this
Yeah.
time, like before taking me in, I'm like, you know, what if everything goes wrong and I'm not coming at
Yeah.
it? Like just all these really intense, thoughts.
Yeah. That
Yeah,
would have
so
been so hard. And especially like, you and your fiance are planning to have a family and actively trying to have a family. And then this pregnancy comes along and they're removing a fallopian tube. And as the doctor said, we can't promise that's all that's going to happen. I mean,
yeah,
your fertility could have ended right there and then that very
yeah,
day, which is, well, natural fertility, I should say.
yeah.
There would have been other options for you, of course, but I mean, they're not always guaranteed either, are they?
No.
Wow. So did they were they able to give you an estimation on the gestation?
So they said around 5 to 7 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah. That's
yeah,
still actually quite a progressed pregnancy for ectopic. So I can see how that's ruptured.
yeah. When
Yeah.
later on, because you know how you can on your My Health record, you get some things sent there, and there was, I think it might have been the ultrasound report got sent, and I
Yeah.
could read, and it said it had like it had a heartbeat and everything, like
Wow.
you know that they were able to detect that,
Okay.
and I was just like, oh, okay, like I didn't know that. And that
Yeah.
was a few months later. I think I stumbled across it when I was looking at something else. I was like, oh, what's this? And I
Yeah.
was like, oh, okay.
It does make it hard, doesn't it? I know that through, after our son was sent away for autopsy and stuff, we lost a son in between our
Yeah.
two girls, and
Oh,
it wasn't until very many years later that I pulled down a box and I was going through all the paperwork, and everything makes sense now, but it
yeah,
didn't necessarily make sense when it all happened. So I actually found out a lot about my own personal health, any genetic stuff that we're carrying,
yeah,
the real cause, and I just have a better picture now of everything that happened.
yeah,
So that I wonder whether it is something that they deliberately kept from you about the heartbeat, because then
yeah,
not only now are you dealing with surgery, possibly ending up infertile, and you've just been told you're pregnant and then it's been taken away from you the same day. some people aren't going to handle it too well on the guilt side of things if they realize that it was also an emergency abortion at the same time. Yeah, so that would make it really hard. So were you fortunate enough to be able to take some time off work? Or
so I was coming to the end of, I was already on annual leave, just normal annual leave,
lucky
from the school holidays, and I think it was going to be my last week of annual leave, and I was like, my son was back to school, so I was kind of going to have the week to myself. I was like, yay.
Yeah.
And so I ended up like messaging my team manager at work and just being like, this is what's happened. I'm not coming back like straight away. They just were like, you've got your sick leave, take whatever you need, just keep us updated on what you need. I think I ended up having an extra week and a half or something like that off. I think the physical recovery was a lot quicker than probably the mental, like the emotional.
Exactly. Yeah. Do you have a great deal of support in the way of a friend circle?
Yeah. So we I guess we were torn, and I felt a bit torn between like my partner didn't really want to tell a lot of people and things like that, whereas I like to share my grief and things like that, but that fine line of respecting what's our private thing, but also it's at the end of the day, it was I guess my body and my experience and that too.
Exactly. I think
so,
like a lot of partners, I don't know, men are from Mars, women are from Venus. We're different creatures and they think differently. I wonder if somehow deep down there was some sort of sense of failure going through his head. Like he's failed you. And I'm sure that is absolutely not the case, but I wonder sometimes whether that's where that comes from, not wanting to talk about it.
I'm not sure. We never really
discussed it.
I know I had that sense of like, I think it was immediately like straight afterwards while I woke up and was in recovery, because I couldn't have, like, he wasn't allowed in afterwards when I was up on a ward and things like that, and I think they didn't have enough beds in whatever ward I was meant to go to, so I was on like the urology ward or something in a room with 4 other old guys, and I'm there like pretty tearful and crying and things like that, and so that was like, I could have stayed overnight, but I was like, I want to go home. I don't be here and
true
setting. So I went home that night. But that was something that kept going through my mind, like, he's not going to want to be with me, I'm not going to be able to give him kids, and like it just all these really, I don't know, like they were ridiculous thoughts, but they were just what came up. Like we'd never, when we got together, we're like, this is going to be, we're having kids and that's it and whatever. And things like that. So, but that was, I guess, hard in my own head to deal with, was just like, am I going to, get rejected now or something? And that's nothing on him or anything what he's like. Like I don't know, it was just crazy. Those were just some of the thoughts that come up.
Yeah, exactly. I think a lot of women hold on to a lot of guilt when it comes to a pregnancy loss. And I was saying this to the last person that I was talking to on the podcast that came out last week. It's almost like us women expect that the whole responsibility of fertility and everything is all on us. It's something that we all take on as women, as nurturers, as fertility goddesses, and we take on all of that responsibility. And I feel like sometimes society expects that of us too. If there's if there is infertility or anything, it's always jumps straight to the woman, what's going on with her. I think it's taken a long time for society to realize that it's a shared journey, and there can be just as many complications on the man's side as there is on the woman's side. But I definitely feel like women just hold a lot more guilt. And it's not that men don't hold guilt, and I'm sure they feel terrible, but being a woman myself, I know that, I probably hold a lot more guilt for our loss than what my husband does. That doesn't mean to say that he's not sad, and he hasn't had a hard time dealing with it. I think he struggled most with not knowing how to help me help myself is what it was.
I think that's probably definitely it.
Yeah, definitely. So
it was supportive, and but I don't even know now what the best thing would be to say to someone who I think there's just no words sometimes, or I think it's one of those things where actions are probably a bit better than words, where just being there for people is probably the bigger thing.
Did you find that when you broke the news to your friend circle that you had a mixed reaction across the board?
I think they were all pretty the same. We're just like, oh my God, I'm sorry this happened to you. And they came over and brought food, like they all came and visited and brought food and just stuff like that. And it just it was like they were just immediately supportive. And I've got two sisters as well who were just and we're really close, so that it was helpful and everything. But I found like whoever I spoke to about it were supportive. I think the difficulty came a little bit later on when, like, a close friend, she became pregnant, and she had felt, I think, a bit reserved about telling me that of her. I think that's where probably things were a bit like and it's good that people are mindful, I guess, but I also don't want people to be fearful that they can't share at that time. I think now, that because we've gone on and had him, it's a bit, I feel a lot differently about it compared to, I don't know, if we maybe hadn't have gone on and had a successful pregnancy. I don't know how I would my perspective would be on it, I guess.
Exactly. And as the raw reality, and as much as people like to say, oh no, I would never be jealous of somebody else's success, I would never think badly for my friend becoming pregnant. The reality is 99.9% of women that are having fertility struggles or have lost a baby, they have a dark moment. They just do. We just don't talk about it. But I think that it should be spoken about, because this opens up a whole other area where it's a good indication that there is a hole where we are missing the extra support,
I feel that definitely. I think especially after, like, I was discharged from hospital and they were like, all right, you'll have a review in 6 weeks. And that was kind of it. There's no referral to like mental health support or, nothing like that. And I was kind of a bit like, okay, what do I do now? Like, am I meant to be doing something? Am I meant to be having checkups? At that time, I didn't have an actual like GP. I used to just go to like, your walk-in clinics and things like that. And I went in and I had a really horrible experience with the GP, who I think, like, to her, she was also probably under the pump and busy and whatever. And she was, and because I booked in and just was like, so, this happened, I'm just like, and she was like, so what do you want me to do? And I was like, well,
wow.
I was like, I don't know, like, what am I meant to be doing or whatever. Because those, I suppose, first few days, I literally just spent the days just lying on the couch, crying, watching TV, comfort eating, things like that. And then afterwards I was like, okay, well, like, what am I meant to be doing? So then I actually sought out a GP and found the most amazing doctor. And the first thing she said to me was, I'll look after you. And
oh, good.
I just like burst into tears and
Yeah.
I think.
Oh, oh, honey, it's okay. It is hard. It's a very hard topic to talk about across the board, obviously. And I'm sure that the people that are watching this also, we're mothers and we're women, and we have a secret sisterhood, and until you've actually been through it yourself, you just you don't know, and as
Definitely.
yeah. And I think this is like a really good example of obviously my pregnancy was a lot further along. um
Yeah.
and but I have also experienced a early loss pregnancy as well. And back when I had my early loss pregnancy, we would have been around about the 7 to 8 week mark. I was almost conditioned by society and friends and the public to kind of downplay my loss,
Yeah.
and I noticed that over the years, after we lost our son, um, I found myself thinking less and less about my early loss. And then it wasn't until like quite a while ago when my husband wrote me a card. I'm pretty sure it was might have been for our anniversary or something. I can't remember what it was. And he addressed, the children that we have in heaven.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, that
Yeah.
is lovely. Yeah. And it had me thinking, I thought, men don't have that pressure. It's kind of like once a baby is lost, and the guy, all their mates are supportive. They're supportive in a different way, but then they just kind of like get on with it. Or so we think.
Yeah.
But obviously they don't. They're creatures that we just don't understand. But us women are so hard on ourselves that I would never have dared told a mother that just had a stillborn baby that I lost a baby at 4 weeks, because I would somehow be comparing my loss to hers, and
Yeah.
I didn't feel worthy of even being able to, you know, be in the loss club. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it does make it hard. Very much so. So, like looking back on when you were planning your family, obviously this is the last thing that you expected to happen. Looking back now, what do you think that you could have done to sort of safeguard yourself? Because I mean, you had your oldest child at the age of 20, and
Yeah.
then obviously there's this big gap, and like you said, fertility was a little bit harder than what you expected. Um, what advice would you give yourself back then?
Um, I don't know, maybe to just have all those, pre-pregnancy checks, make sure everything is working okay, or, that there wasn't anything that, I guess, being more prepared that it might not be positive, that the journey might not be positive. I
Yeah.
definitely was not prepared for that. I hadn't really heard of many people around me having had pregnancy loss, and I guess what I've come to discover is because people keep it hush hush, you don't talk. It's like mental health. You don't talk about it because it makes other people uncomfortable.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think probably preparing that things might not be successful, and
Yeah.
it might not be such, I know, a big. I don't know. I don't know if anything can actually still prepare you for when you have that loss, but maybe having that thought of something
Yeah.
could go wrong, and
Yeah.
just
Just
having
being,
that sitting there alongside of things will go right,
yeah. Yeah. I guess it's like an important message that I know we pushed a lot on the last podcast was about women. You go for your checkups and you check your boobs every day and you have your
Yeah.
pap smears done, and nobody really kind of like thinks about their fertility health.
Yeah.
They're like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm 25. Like, I had a baby 5 years ago, and um that one, like was a piss in the pan. I got pregnant, and it
Yeah.
just all worked out. And I guess like, we forget that not only do we age, but our
Everything.
fertility
Yeah.
goes quite quickly
Yeah.
downhill. Yeah. So I have two girls, and fertility is going to be one thing that I'll definitely be having a chat to them, when they're older and in a serious relationship. And not only having that talk to them about, their bodies and all the rest of it, but I think that there's another element that we need to start adding to those conversations with our children and also with our boys, because I mean, they don't necessarily, they could have problems with sperm counts and things like that,
Mhm.
but it's just setting them up that, just because it's your body, if you're going to start a family, your wife's fertility is actually your business and also your responsibility as well.
Yeah.
It's a journey that you're going on together.
Yeah.
Um, so even just having that conversation and being open, and I think it's something that GPs really need to start introducing into women's health clinics
Yeah.
as well. It should be a point in a woman's life where even before they're thinking about having children, because half the time, by the time you think about it, um, if the complications are already there, it's too late by the time you're
Yeah.
already thinking about it. It needs to sort of like be brought upon us as normal, and at the
Yeah.
minute it's just not. It's just a silent struggle that everyone just goes through. And
Definitely.
so, I mean, you may have been in a better position if this was brought about and you had the opportunity to freeze your eggs, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
or freeze some sperm or some embryos or something. I mean, it's a very expensive process, but it could save you a world of grief later
Yeah.
on down the track as well.
And I think
Yeah.
that's something you definitely don't think about when you're in your mid-20s or anything. You
Yeah.
definitely don't think about your future,
Yeah.
self. Like there's that message that's always out there, like the older you get, you're probably not going to have kids, or you're too old to have kids, and that type of message.
Yeah.
It's like either you're too young to have them when you have them when you're young, and then when you start getting, it's like, oh, you're getting old. And that's actually what I did. I did have a few people like, comment on, even though I was 30 when we started trying, and then when 32 when I had him. They're like,
Yeah.
oh, that's, a bit. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm only started my 30s. I didn't think that was
I know.
anything.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm 40. What am I? 44 this year, and I don't feel it. I feel like I could go out and have another 100 babies, but my body says no. But my body
Yeah.
just, yeah. All of ours have been IVF, but yeah, very, very, very interesting that nearly every single woman that I've spoken to hasn't thought about fertility or the complications of fertility until it's been too late. And then that regret of looking back and thinking, wow. But I don't believe that it's all our fault, you know.
No. I feel
Yeah.
like in school, when you do sex ed, you get that message, you must use contraception or you'll be pregnant. Like as if
Yes.
it's that instant thing that's going to happen
Yeah.
straight away. And I think, that's I feel like that's one of the main messages. Sometimes I don't know what it's like today
Yeah.
for like sex ed at school, but like back then it was definitely make sure you use protection if it's, not, condoms, whatever type of contraception and things like that, or you will get pregnant and then you have to deal with this thing like this pregnant, stuff like that. And
Yeah.
it's not that easy as,
No,
I
it's
think
not
a
that
lot of us
easy.
find out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I feel as though there needs to be another module put onto that, because yeah, I guess you're right. When you look back at your sex ed, it's like, if you do the deed, you're gonna get pregnant.
Yeah.
There's no, what if you want to be a young mum? I mean, I don't see any shame in being a young mother.
Yeah.
Um, in fact, it's probably our prime time to actually start our family
Yeah.
when we're young. And like the infertility statistics are showing us that now that, a lot of women are putting things on the back burner and waiting until they're 30, even 40 before they have children. If you look back through your family tree and had a look at, generations before you, no one was having babies at 40,
No.
they were lucky to live until they were 40.
Yeah.
So everyone was all having their babies really early on. Yeah, so I feel as though there's a big chunk of education missing when it comes to sex education. And yeah, I think it's really important, not only for the schools, but also just awareness in general throughout the public. And I think it's something that the GPs and women health clinics and stuff should start adopting in as well. Just like a regular pap smear test, like $100 blood test, and you can find out your egg count.
Yeah. Yeah.
It may not be useful to you that year, but at least you can keep a track of it
Yeah.
and see how
Yeah.
you're going. Yeah. Yeah. So I guess the hardest thing about early loss, well, what I found anyway, is that there's not much to sort of, like display or hold on to.
No.
And
Well, I hadn't
kind
even
of
done like, hadn't peed on a pregnancy. Like there was nothing, I
nothing.
guess, really
Yeah.
about it. Which is funny because then, not funny, but like after that, we had one more confirmed miscarriage, and I'm pretty sure I had another one, but I never went
Yeah.
and confirmed it or anything. But it felt, the same.
Yeah.
Those times I did like, pee on a stick and whatever.
Yeah.
But they were a lot more earlier on losses that I feel like I compare them to that first one. Oh, it wasn't as traumatic as that. So
Yeah.
it was just like, oh, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that was definitely just the ectopic was a very traumatic thing. And I
Yeah,
think it then
definitely.
also affected on when I was pregnant with Theo here, how I felt about the pregnancy I was definitely a lot more anxious and,
Yeah.
things like that throughout the whole time. Not just the whole waiting till the safe 12 weeks. But yeah, the
Yes.
whole
The entire
pregnancy.
way through. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's sad, isn't it? Because I mean, like being pregnant is like just, I mean, it's something that is a part of motherhood that you get to share just solely to yourself. I mean, of course, like, you got your partner and they can feel your belly and everything, but
Yeah.
you are literally experiencing that solo. That is your special,
Yeah.
piece of your creation that no one else can actually really share with you.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it is sad. I find that I feel as though sometimes these are the little triggering things that kind of build up to postnatal depression later on too.
Yeah.
Because I mean, obviously it isn't natural to not be able to feel a strong bond with a pregnancy, just like it's not natural to not feel a strong bond with your baby, but it can happen, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and it isn't necessarily anything wrong with you or anybody else that's struggling with those sort of things. There can be so many different factors that build up that just changes the course of things and the way that women feel about themselves. Um, some of them being society, some of them being your internal dialogue that you feed yourself all this bullshit every day that you're a failure and you can't make the shit work. And like, it really can fuck you up to a certain degree. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then even after you have the baby and everything's all well and good, it's like, wow, well, now we've got COVID to worry about. What if my baby catches COVID and dies? And,
Yeah.
all these scary things to navigate through. And at the same time, with all of the COVID stuff and everything that happened, I found that it wasn't as though people didn't want to be there for their friends. They wanted to, but there was like so much distance between everybody. And then suddenly things that you would once call your friend and have support for, no one was bothering each other, as
Yeah.
so I think it's very important, to sort of have a few close friends that you tell everything to, selectively, because we all know that, sometimes friends don't last forever, and that's okay. Um, but there's also like a lot of help out there. It doesn't necessarily have to be a friend that you have to divulge everything to. Um, and there's lots of support groups out there on Facebook. All you have to do is Google. There's some that, you go, great, a support group, let's go in there. And then you scroll through and they're all just, it's like, oh my God, it's just like a collection of bitches that just want to tear everybody down. I think once you get into that right group with that right crowd, and you're selective with what you share, there is a lot of help out there. And 99% of women do want to do the right thing by other women, most of us do. There's a percentage that don't, and that's okay. They can do them, but you do you. So if you had any advice for anybody that is going through a ectopic pregnancy or has just come out of one, what would be your biggest advice that you could give them?
I think don't keep it in, and don't feel like you have to treat it like it's something that needs to be, that's taboo, that needs to be shush. If you want to talk about it, talk about it. I think the first few times that I did, I almost, when I would tell people I've had an ectopic, it almost came out like a whisper, like I could hardly say the word. But the more I spoke about it, the more I found that there was actually people that had experience, like people that I knew that had experienced either that or some type of pregnancy loss. And it became easier, I guess, to talk about. And I felt that helped me, I guess, cope with it a bit more, being able to talk about it instead of treating it like it's something that need to be quiet, shouldn't be talked about, or whatever. I found a really good support group. I think it was on Instagram or Facebook. I think I found it on Instagram first, and they're just called Ectopic Awareness. And because that was something I found when I was Googling, there's actually not as much information as I thought. And a lot of the information is from like the UK and things like that. There wasn't a lot of like specific Australian websites and things like that about it. And I found that was a really good page and to, write into, and just reading other people's experiences help make it feel a lot more normalized that this actually happens to a lot of women. It's not a once off some freak thing that's happened to you and there's something wrong with you. It's I think probably a lot more a part of the pregnancy journey than I guess what we probably assume or think might be. Like, that loss is a lot more common than I think what you first think, because you always, like with anything, you hear of people's successes.
Yes, exactly. It's I don't know, it sometimes feel like a dirty word for people, to come out and say. And sometimes it's not necessarily what people say. Sometimes it's what people don't say that hurts the most, like I cringe sometimes when I scroll through Facebook and I see a friend that's had a loss, and you read the comments and they're like, oh, better now than later on. And like, I mean, they're just words that they don't take away any pain. They just add to the guilt of the mother and what they're going through. And I often think to myself, I hope to God you never have to experience this. So obviously you haven't, or that's not the advice that you'd be given. But I think sometimes people just don't know what to say. And some people just don't say anything at all because of that. And sometimes that's more hurtful than anything else anybody has ever said, like just like giving a thumbs up to a Facebook post, like, they've acknowledged it, but they haven't acknowledged it at the same time. So, I definitely feel that could be more that the hospitals and like, you know, postnatal staff and stuff could offer when it comes to support, definitely.
Yeah.
I'm always big on therapy. When I say therapy, there's different sorts of therapy, obviously. I know this amazing guy, his name is Jamie Ryder, and he has a podcast, and his podcast's name is Fuck Therapy. And I think it is just amazing because, I mean, if you ever ask anybody that's been to therapy, they don't want to be going to therapy, you know.
Yeah.
But there are services out there that that they're very supportive, and they get to the root of the problem, and they give you the advice and the skills that you need to be able to move through and past whatever it is that you're struggling with. But they do it in a non-clinical sense, you know.
Yeah.
I found that like a lot of workshops and stuff now have been coming very popular, and a lot of people just also some people just choose to work through their own problems at home, whether that's through listening to podcasts and doing their own research. And there comes a time when you place it all together and you can pack it all up and put it in a box, but you never actually forget about it at all.
Yeah.
And you know, you may be okay for 3 months, and then you may not, and then you may be okay for 2 years, and then suddenly you're not. You know, it's people have to understand that these things you know, just we're allowed to move through those emotions. We're allowed to feel sad. We're allowed to talk about our 2-week loss. We're allowed to say it's not fair and have our tantrum. But then
Yeah.
we're allowed to be okay the next day. And you know, you get a lot of people that they just think that just because you're having a good day, like
It
everything's
means
fine.
you're okay.
Yeah. I won't drop over that soup this week because I saw her at a birthday party last week and she seems to be doing okay. You know, don't stop dropping off the fucking soup. In fact, pack some Tim Tams, you know, like
Yeah.
yeah. We all need it. We all need to be supporting each other a little bit more. And like you said at the start, is it's not so much about what they say, it's like the little things that they do, which make the biggest difference, I feel. The unexpected visits, you know,
Yeah.
the food, the magazines, sorry, just 2 seconds. I have
You're right.
got my husband calling me. I am going to text him and tell him I'll call him back in a minute. Oh my God. I thought that I told him all about my appointments this morning, but obviously I didn't tell him that one. He rings me religiously. um, I'll just send him a message. Okay, I'll call you back. Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for sharing your story with me. I understand that it's a hard one to share, but I think it has a really important message that, you know, 1 minute everything can be fine, and then next minute everything can't be, you know, going to plan. And it's not necessarily anything that you've done or wanted or anything like that, but I think it brings great awareness to the fact that the importance of knowing your own fertility health, and keeping on top of it, just like you would your mental health, you know, your vaginal health, your boobies, you know, like everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, your spiritual health, everything. Yeah, it's a very important message. I'm so glad that you got your family now that you so much deserve. Do you think that you'll be going back for another one anytime soon?
Not sure. We keep, arguing about it.
Yeah.
I don't know, because then there's like other things I want to do as well. I think because we originally didn't think it would take this amount of time from when we started, and there was a lot of things that we probably put off. So I'm not sure, but just enjoying, you know, this one at the moment. I'll be going back to work soon, so
yeah. Oh, that's
we'll
good.
see. We're not decided either way, I think.
Yes, exactly. At least now you're aware, to some degree, that there may be a bit more
Definitely.
planning. Yeah. I
And I
wish
think
you,
also for me, that fear is still a little bit there, even though we've had a
yeah,
successful one, it doesn't mean that, it
yeah,
could happen again, or
yeah,
especially because I'm older again, and,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I guess it just sort of resets that focus of, things can go wrong.
yeah,
Like um, you you hear some people talking about how fertile they are, and oh, I've got 12
yeah,
kids. All I have to do is look at it and I'm pregnant. And
yeah,
and you do have people that are lucky in that sense. But this is just an example of sometimes sometimes I think people take things for granted and they think it's all just going to work out. And it's devastating when it doesn't, but it's a big
yeah,
lesson.
yeah.
But I feel like it's a lesson that we can pass down to our children too.
Definitely.
Yeah. Do you think that you'll tell your son about the loss when he's older?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, yeah, we
Yeah.
will. Like we discussed it a little bit with like my other son, because he was, I guess, experienced it a little bit, but I suppose he still didn't quite, understand fully what it all meant. I remember he made some comment. He's like, "Oh, for a minute I was a big brother," or something like that, or
Oh,
whatever. And he had like that little moment, I guess, of
yeah.
what could have been himself.
Yeah.
But he was 10, I think, at the time. Yeah, he would have been 10 at the time. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
yeah, I think once it was past that whole where I wasn't visibly upset, for him, that moved on, which is fair enough for a kid. Like, they don't need to hold on to
Yeah,
those
exactly.
burdens. But yeah, it's something I'll definitely talk about. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I think it'll be good, and yeah, I think it'll be a good opportunity to talk about, that um, it's not the olden days anymore. Like there's these things happen and they can be really scary and unfair. But we're lucky enough now that we have so many options um available to us to be able to complete our families, which is fantastic.
yeah,
Um, but they also need to be aware that not all these things, I mean, we could be throwing everything under the sun and there's still, childless couples out there that just will give their left leg to be able to have a baby,
mm,
um, despite doing everything that they possibly can.
yeah.
So, but I want to thank you so much for sharing your story with me. So,
Thank you
um,
for having me.
oh, you're welcome. I'm going to ask you after all of the story. Do you feel like your superpower has shifted? What would you add to your superpower?
It probably goes a little bit with it, but I suppose being, I guess, resilient, just,
Yeah,
things is when I think back to just how especially those first few days, just how much of a pit I was in, and
yeah.
whatever. And then when starting to crack it, and then
Oh, that's okay.
uh, having those fears, I guess, again with like this pregnancy,
Yeah,
I guess being able to overcome, just, yeah, being resilient, I suppose, goes hand in hand with stress a little bit as well. So
yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
I think thinking about it, yeah, probably am a lot more resilient than what I think I probably
Yeah, yeah,
am, maybe.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Resilient and the glue of your family. I think you're probably a little bit more in tune than what you think you are. And yeah, I think that you ought to be proud of the fact that you've got a resilient crown on your head because yeah, you're definitely a queen. You're rocking it. You've got a beautiful baby.
Thank you.
You've got a wedding coming up. Yeah, this isn't the end of the road for you. It's just all getting started, really. And just because of that one little speed hump, you know,
Yeah,
um, they do is just remind us to be grounded and humble and just realize that um, you know, not only do things not always come easy, but in some sense we all have to work for everything. And that
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily mean that we have to go to a 9-to-5 job to manifest things to happen, but we're all in control of our own destiny to some point. I believe that there's always a map laid out for us, and no matter what direction we want it to go, that's the way we're going. But there's definitely things that we can do, to sort of help us along that journey, and maybe we can turn the direction. Who knows? But you seem to be heading in a good one at the minute. And I'm almost jealous about the fact that you've got a gorgeous little boy sitting on your lap right now. I think my fertility days are over. I'm definitely done, but I do get clucky.
Yeah.
He's absolutely gorgeous. Congratulations on
Thank you.
your little one, and also congratulations on your wedding coming up. And yeah, I'd please stay in touch. I'd love to hear how the wedding goes, and even send me a picture of the wedding. Yeah.
We haven't actually picked a date or anything yet, but eventually.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll get
there.
there. Well, you have had a lot of crazy shit happen in the last 2 years, so who can blame you? You've had COVID, you've had your angel baby, you've had this baby. Yeah, it seems as though all your paths are crossing all at once.
Yes, yeah.
It's good though. It's good. Yeah, we don't need plans anymore. It's not the 1980s. You don't need to have the baby after the marriage or anything like that.
No.
There's no rules. No one's judging.
Definitely.
Yeah. It was really lovely chatting with you, and I'd love to have you on sometime in the future and just catch up and see how you're going and drop another episode on
that would be
one.
good.
Yeah. But what's on for the rest of the day? Just being Mama Bear?
Yeah, going to town. I think we're going to go swimming because we live just a little bit out of town. So yeah, go do that and
go have
catch up with my sister and niece. And
sounds good. Yeah.
Nothing too hectic.
Yeah. Yep. No, you've had enough stress in your life. Fuck that. You just look after yourself. You deserve it. Well,
thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. And I will catch up with you outside the podcast. So thank you so much. And yeah, like I said, I hope that we'll have you back very soon. Well, not too soon because you won't have too much to tell me, but we'll catch up again in 12 months' time and see where you are, and drop another podcast underneath this one. And I'd love to hear all about your wedding.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. See ya.
Bye.